Hey, welcome to Ritchie Bros Inside Edge podcast. We conduct dozens of farm retirement auctions each spring, where we sell thousands of agricultural equipment items across North America. In this month's episode of the Inside Edge, we're going to sit down with our in-house ag experts to talk about our latest farm-focused market trends report. And we're also going to preview upcoming June events with our auction correspondent, Ian Malinsky. All right, let's go.
Hey everybody, Ian here to talk about our upcoming June auctions. We have more than 40,000 equipment items and vehicles selling through 60 events in June, including agricultural auctions, regional events, and big multi-day sales in Houston, Texas, and Edmonton, Alberta. Here to talk about our June events are auction experts Kevin Kobus and Warren Wachter. Kevin, with so much equipment and so many auctions, where should customers start their search?
Well, thanks, Ian, and good day, everybody. Listen, we have done a really stellar job of trying to optimize what we call search engine optimization, SEO for short. And so getting our equipment categorized in a way that makes it easy for people to search on the web. So that's the first place that I would start. And use the enhanced features that we built there. And also, just to give a shout out to Progress, we will be enhancing that even further as we get down the road here. The second thing I would tell people is, even though in a lot of places we're having auctions where we don't have bidding from our sites, we're still open for business. And that means, if you want to come in the week before the auction and look at equipment, we're more than welcome or more than happy to welcome people there. We have catalogs there. We have e-catalogs we can give people through a QR code. Any way they want to make their notes, look at the equipment. But, the message there is Ritchie Bros is open for business. So, look, I'd start with the web. If you see something that piques your interest and you're in the area, stop by the yard and take a look.
Awesome. That's great, Kevin. Great place to start, obviously, at rbauction.com or wherever you're looking to buy. Warren, if we could move over to you, any key events? We have a whole bunch going on in June. Are there any that customers should keep an eye on?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. As you mentioned, auctions all over the place, but a couple that I would call out would be our June 13th to 15th sale in Grand Prairie. We've got a major realignment for Brocore Construction, which is a big civil contractor from the Dawson Creek area, as well as a dispersal for McGlynn Contracting, which specializes in steep slope logging. After that, we've got our June 14th Quebec timed auction. This is going to be our largest timed auction event ever in Quebec, and it's got an incredible selection of construction items, trucks, and reefer trailers, really anything you're looking for. And then we kind of round out the month back in Edmonton on June 27th to 29th. This sale features a complete dispersal for Northwell Oilfield Hauling, which is one of the premier rig moving spreads, certainly in Western Canada, but maybe even in the world. Unfortunately, this family suffered the loss of the company's founder. We are very honored that they looked to us to help with this chapter, of things in their business. Most people in the industry know this company and ownership really well. For those that don't, how well they ran their business and the quality of gear they have is going to be immediately apparent as soon as you see the iron. And we're looking forward to delivering results that reflect the owner's reputation and character. Thanks, Ian.
A ton of great stuff going on in Canada. Kevin, what about down in the States? What sorts of events should maybe people keep an eye on?
Yeah, so look, I was a customer here before I started working here, and I bought equipment here 20 years. People come to auctions because they're looking for a bargain. And so I would say, focus in on what you want and then pick any event. I think all our events are as good as any other. Certainly the regional events offer a large selection of equipment, but even those smaller events are going to offer some nuggets. One of the things that people can look out for that we have coming up in our Great Lakes event is equipment from a company named Dan's Excavating. A little bit older equipment, but it's very well maintained one owner fleet that they'll be dispersing at our Great Lakes sale, which will include our Detroit satellite yard. We'll also have some of their items on our Marketplace E format, so they can buy things there and make offers there. And look, I'm not going to leave out our online events either. Our weekly featured auctions are great places to buy equipment. It's certainly a large auction every week with 2, sometimes 3 rings and we've been running 3 rings recently. So lots of little places to find good used equipment here at Ritchie Brothers.
I like the way you put that, Kevin. Start your search first. What do you want? And then figure out where you're going to go. For this month, Warren, we actually have a couple of in-person events. Maybe you could tell customers about what they should expect when they come to visit our sites.
Yeah, on-site bidding isn't available at all of our locations, but we are featuring it at our upcoming Grand Prairie and Edmonton sales. Again, those are on June 13th and 15th, and then June 27th to 29th. But as Kevin mentioned, I would just reiterate that all of our sites are open to preview traffic. If you want to come down and kick the tires, you can do that at every single one of our locations.
And Ian, I might just toss in there too, not to leave out Houston. They'll be hosting a live event on site.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin and Warren, for joining us. And we'll see you guys all at the auction.
Hey, welcome to another Ritchie Brothers Inside Edge podcast. This month we are talking ag equipment, and we have 2 ag equipment experts from Ritchie Brothers here with us today. We have Jordan Clark and Luke Fritshaw, who are both part of our ag division and selling ag equipment. And welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate being called an expert.
Yeah. So, Jordan, let's start with you. Probably a question people would just like to know is, what is the most popular type of ag equipment on the market today overall?
I'd have to say the category that probably drives the most interest is agricultural tractors. And it really doesn't matter if it's a tractor, 4-wheel drive, mechanical front-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, or even compact utilities. That just seems to be a category that everybody has a lot of passion around. And I think just as I list out 4, 5, 6 different types of tractors, that's a pretty good indication as to why there's such popularity around it. Every farm has a need for multiple sizes of tractors, right from high horsepower tractors pulling air drills and planters, right down to utility tractors and smaller and older horsepower tractors running utilities such as augers, grain vacs. So the usage just runs from very small to very big. And as farmers become more efficient with their operations, kind of the age-old process of unhitching one tractor to go hitch onto another implement to go do a job has kind of gone by the wayside. So a lot of customers are actually just having multiple tractors to hitch on implements and leave them there. And that'll kind of finalize the purpose of that attachment. So just find that the lifespan of tractors seem to hang on forever. You can go to any farm right now and see a 50, 60-year-old tractor still in operation, where you wouldn't see that with a combine or even a sprayer. So their longevity is that much more. And the purpose of what, they would have been maybe a main tractor 30, 40 years ago, and now they're a third or fourth in the line, but still very much needed on today's operations.
And just on that, is there one specific type of tractor that you're seeing kind of the most popular, or does it vary on, region or need, or is there anything we seeing there?
Well, I think it does vary a bit on region and kind of required necessity. But I think, if anything, there's been a trend towards 4-wheel drive tractors into track machines, just as people see the benefits of what tracks can do, both early in the season and late in the season for some very important timeframes of seeding and utilizing a tractor for harvest. Just more and more people want the benefits of traction and less compaction with a tractor check kind of both those boxes. So although the 4-wheel drive is still very popular and would outnumber track machines on most farms, there's been a definite trend and switch over to track tractors. However, that does come at a cost. They do come in a significant price increase versus a 4-wheel drive, but I think the long-term benefits will outweigh the cost increase.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I mean, sort of segues into our next question and Luke, let's throw this one over to you, while tractor units coming to auction have had a higher sort of median age this year, we've still seen prices increase like 16% Canada, 11% in the US. Why do you think the demand, Jordan touched on it, but why is the demand so high for the track units?
Yeah, I think Jordan touched on a lot of it. I think a big demand and a big driver of price is not only what the new price is. Everything seems to be going up in the world. Tractors are no different, but the accessibility as well. You can drive by a lot of different dealerships, used lots, and the one thing you rarely see is a high horsepower tractor, specifically a track tractor sitting there for sale. They usually get scooped up pretty quick. So when we get the opportunity to sell them by auction, whether it's a farm retirement or a realignment or any kind of dispersal, or even a guy selling just one tractor, it gets, the demand for it gets high, and the bidding goes nuts because they're just not available out there right now.
Is it anything like other types of equipment where is there any kind of shortage of supply out there, or like the OEMs, have they slowed down making them? Is that anything of that contributing to the price or demand going up?
Yeah, it's really driven them up. There's a lot of deals out there that you hear about where the new purchases just aren't showing up on time, which just flows down the kind of waterfall of used prices and actually used availability, because a lot of those larger farmers are trading in their old ones to the dealership, and then they get to sell them to the next farmer as a used unit. So the manufacturers really had to cut back just due to supply chain issues and things like that. So it's just really forced the chain reaction down the line. And as the manufacturers catch up and they start, getting over the supply chain issues with a lot of their equipment, I think that we're going to see probably them catch up in production, deliveries start showing up on time. And obviously at that point, they'll ramp up and start getting more units out into the market, which will probably settle down this high, not to call it inflation, but high inflation in prices that we've seen over the last couple of years.
I was just going to jump in. I think one of the things that we've also seen too is that through the supply issues and the rollback of production from the manufacturers, they've realized that there still is a demand, and the price, really is at an all-time high for these assets. So I think moving forward, what we're hearing from a lot of manufacturers is they're not necessarily going to get to pre-COVID production levels, because they really don't need a strong demand and a strong price right now. So why would they overproduce? So the allocation available to dealerships has kind of been pulled back, and I think is almost leveling at numbers that were less than what it was pre-COVID, just for the fact they can balance the number of units in the market today. But they're also doing that at a spot where the demand is quite high and the price is quite high as well.
Well, you touched just earlier on four-wheel drive units being super popular still. So we saw price increases in Canada, but the US saw a 50% decline approximately. And we're wondering, why do you think there's such a huge discrepancy in the two markets? Do you have any kind of take on that?
Yeah, I think maybe it's not telling the total story on both north and south of the border. I think the markets that we sell for and we sell into are quite different in Canada and the US. So on the Canadian side, majority of our four-wheel drive sales will come from end users, farmers, through either farm retirement auctions or through consignments to our yard, and they will sell to other end users. So I think it's more reflective of what kind of true market to market value would be from one end user to another. In the US, we don't have that same selling pattern and same connectivity with the end user farmers on a selling basis. So I think a lot of the four-wheel drive transactions that we have in the US are actually more so industrial based, meaning that they're selling from construction companies to other construction companies. And so I think the patterns for that will ebb and flow a little bit more on the industrial market, which seems to spike and drop based on time of the year, job availability, projects and such, where the ag market seems to roll on its highs and lows on a much broader scale and doesn't have the sharp declines and increases that we see on the industrial side. So I think, if we had the chance and hopefully at some point will on the US side to sell for more on the end user agricultural side, I think we'd probably see more transactions and data that would be somewhat reflective of what we see in Canada.
Well, getting slightly a little more into the weeds, for mechanical front wheel drive units, we saw a huge decline in volume in the US. and Canadian volumes are sort of steady again. Is there a discrepancy for that? Is it a reason for that discrepancy? Is it sort of based on what you just touched on?
Well, I think if you look at the U.S. market is one that we would that would use a lot of mechanical front wheel drives more so than we would see, say, in Canada, especially in Western Canada. When you think about the wide open prairies in Western Canada, even in some of those spots in the U.S., that's where you'll see the demand of high horsepower four wheel drives that can pull larger implements. Where at certain pockets in the U.S., very similar to what we maybe see in Ontario and Quebec and Canada, the fields are smaller and their uses of the tractors are a bit smaller. So a smaller frame tractor, such as a front wheel assist, would probably have more use in certain areas than a larger horsepower tractor in the U.S. In saying that, I think when you look at the number of units that were sold in the U.S. Versus the year before, and I think that's just a very good reflection of more units on the market, less demand. So if you look at the 2022 data versus 2023, it's almost doubled for the units that we sold, and we see a slight decline in median price. So I think that's just probably more reflective of the amount of units available on the market and just less demand for those units.
Right. Well, let's switch over to combines. And Luke, question for you is obviously it's always a really big ticket item at auctions. Um, we've seen prices tick up this year slightly in Canada. Um, what do you think sort of accounts for that increased demand in combine market?
Well, I'd love to keep riding the wave of availability, but combines are the one thing that there is a lot out there. They're available everywhere. I think the biggest thing causing that uptick would be just good end user combines that we've sold so far this year, and just the price of new. We're breaking that threshold, and companies are breaking that threshold of selling $1 million machine. When I started in this business 13 years ago, I mean, that wasn't even a blip on the radar or something we could fathom. So it's just the price of new keeps driving that, and the price of good used equipment is just always going to kind of have to follow that, because people understand that if they want to get new, it's X amount more, but they're willing to spend less, but they understand they still have to spend a little bit more than they did last year.
Right. Okay. Well, Jordan, let's chat a little bit about sprayers here. Another popular item at our auctions. We've seen a fairly significant increase in median price over last year, despite units having a fair bit more usage. Do you think there's any reasons for that increase you can put your finger on?
This was a tougher one to dissect, but I think for me, and Luke kind of just touched on it with combines, we're seeing some of the highest priced ag assets ever being sold in the retail market, with many units routinely being retailed north of $1 million and on Canadian side. So I think when you look at just something like sprayer that is very, very specialized, and it's one of those machines where if you look at a tractor can do multiple different jobs on a farm. It can be adapted, and you kind of get by with one tractor to do maybe help with your seeding, and you can use that maybe same machine for pulling a grain cart or something like that, or even some heavy tillage. When it comes to sprayers, they're very specialized, and it comes down to an efficiency level. The windows for spraying in the season are very, very short. And if you miss that window by a week or 2 weeks, then you can't access that field to spray a certain pesticide or herbicide. You miss that window. It does have a drastic change on the outcome of the crop. So what I find is that there's a lot of customers that will be upgrading their sprayers to get exactly what they want for the right size and even the right capacity, and then technology as well. Last night, actually, when I was coming back from a kid's ball game, we actually saw 2 sprayers in the field that were using technology that when they spot green in the field, they'll spray it. So it's the technology that we're seeing on sprayers is unbelievable, and I think that's probably ramped up as much on sprayers than any other ag piece of equipment over the last 10 years is that technology. So it's a very, very specialized machine. I think a lot of farmers will tell you that the sprayer operator is someone that has that expertise and is very sought after. But I think it just comes down to the fact that it's a specialized machine. Everybody wants the latest and greatest technology, so everyone will keep pushing. And of course, as Luke touched on, we've got a short demand in the market in general. So I think when a trade does come up for sale, whether it's traded into a dealership or through an auction process, it's well sought after, and it sells quite quickly. So we actually, year over year, for the last couple of years, we've been setting records within Canada for the highest price sprayer that we sold, and we just actually broke that record again in April. So I think we're going to continue to see that trend, especially on sprayers.
Yeah, and when you talk about technology, it's fun to have all the nice gadgets, but the big reason that it's so expensive and it costs more to get into newer technology is it's actually saving the end user a lot of money. And like Jordan touched on it, it's only spraying the green weeds, so as it doesn't spray every section or every acre of the field, it's spraying just the spots that need to be sprayed, and that just turns into cost savings on chemical and everything like that. Fuel, same thing. It's a big savings for those end users, so they're willing to spend more for newer technology, spend more for later model sprayers, like we're seeing with those records you mentioned.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we've seen similar price increases as well for air drills and seeders. Is it the same sort of them, basically?
Yeah, a lot of what Jordan touched on, it's the same thing. The technology of section control and the efficiency of these newer air drills and size. Obviously, they're trying to make them bigger and more efficient and better. It's just the same thing. It's all getting driven up by, technology is a big part of it, but so is steel, so is rubber, so is it's all increased in price, and it's all just driving up the price of those new ones too.
Yeah, and I think when you look, even with air drills, talking about an efficiency standpoint, when you roll it back 10 years ago, a large air drill at that time would have been 60 feet, maybe 70. And routinely now, those same farms will have 76 foot, 86 foot, in certain cases, 100-foot air drills. So what that does is, as farms increase in size, they can actually cover more acres with the same amount of people. And do it more efficiently. So even this year in Western Canada, it was relatively late seeding season, but many producers weren't actually too worried or too excited about that because they had the equipment to cover the same type of acres more efficiently and still get a crop in a realistic time frame for the growing season, just based on the size of the equipment that they had.
So I'm guessing that farmers they must be seeing significant increases in efficiency if they're willing to shell out, considerably more for air drills and sprayers and seeders, and it must be really, doing the work that they expect it to do.
Yeah, and you got to remember, just Jordan mentioned it, there's short time frames in the season to get everything done. And an older air drill that you're fixing every day or every second day, or you're having breakdowns, that's really tying into the efficiency of being able to get your crop in or crop off when it comes to harvest, or sprayed in the right time frame. All of these things in the ag world, it's so time sensitive. Breakdowns are just crucial and having to be stopped and not seeding when the sun's shining, and then all of a sudden it could rain for a week, and now you're not behind 2 weeks, now you're behind 3, right? So all of those things when it comes to newer technology and just even newer equipment, instead of it being 7 years old and a higher chance of breakdowns, it can be 2 years old. You're willing to spend that money to make sure that your crop gets in at the right time, it gets sprayed at the right time, and it gets taken off the field, and winter doesn't hit, and all of a sudden you have crop sitting out there all winter, right?
Yeah, I think the ag business is a unique one for the fact that your competitors, for lack of a better term, your neighbors, the other farmers in an area, their results are on display right beside yours every single day of the year. As you drive up and down the roads, there's everybody's business is right front and center. So the ones that are doing it really well and have a nice looking crop, there'll be a lot of people that will look up and say, well, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And maybe it's the equipment, maybe it's the efficiencies, maybe it's the practices. So it's really a very competitive industry where you will find that as much as there's a very a neighbor component of it and small communities that we want to help one another, I think there's also a driving sense of wanting to be better than my neighbor as well, or at least taking what they're doing and finding a way to make it better. So they're there's a friendly competition amongst farmers in the industry right now of who can do it best and who can do it better. And so it's a bit of a race to the top when it comes to practices, equipment, efficiencies, technology. So all that, I think, obviously has a direct impact on pricing at the end of the day, because it's just driving that demand and the right assets in certain areas.
For sure. Well, one sort of last equipment related question, and this is maybe not quite as high tech, but I could be wrong, is disc prices have seen a dip year over year. Is there a reason you think that they're struggling a bit more than other categories for equipment?
Well, this is one category. When I looked at the actual assets, the type of the assets that we were selling, a lot of the ones that we're finding that will come up for sale are older discs. So, when you look at the last couple of years, there has been a strong demand into certain type of high speed discs, as they're called. So it's really a change from the 80s and 90s, where a double disc or an offset disc would be a tillage tool that would really rip up the ground, that would open up the soil. And there's been, as technology changed and farming practices have gotten better, there's been a change in that, where less is more and less soil disruption is better. So that's actually driven the discs technology to be changed as well. So what we'll find is there's has been a trend that a lot of customers will go after a high speed disc. And we probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, we saw a huge increase in certain manufacturers get in the high speed market: Degelman, John Deere, Salford, Horsch Anderson, to name a few. And those are the leaders in that high speed disc category. However, in certain areas, those are used to help do a kind of a post-harvest tillage, where they would get the field ready for the next spring, or to help level out ruts if it's been a wet spring or a wet fall. But in most parts of the prairies over the last 4 or 5 years, it actually hasn't been that wet. It's been very, very dry. So there's probably less of demand now than there was 5 years ago for a disc or a high-speed disc. However, it's one of those things that it comes and go. When you need it, you got to have it. But when you don't need it, no one even talks about it. So I think we're in that stage right now where everyone's just kind of hear no evil, see no evil when it comes to a disc and what it's actually for. But if we find ourselves in a wet season, a wet fall, you can better believe that discs will reemerge and be a more sought after commodity.
For sure, right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here, Luke. Talk about we switched gears a little bit in how we do auctions in the ag community now. How we moved from our live on the farm auctions, we would have live auctioneers out and big catchers in a crowd, and we've switched to more of our online timed auctions. And for viewers and listeners, the online timed auction is sort of an automated system. People can kind of go in, bid at their convenience. They've got sort of a longer window to bid. But maybe you could just talk a little more about the benefits of that online timed auction system, especially in the ag community, and how it's helping them out.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's convenience, and for our bidders and buyers, the convenience of having 3 or 4 days to bid on equipment, having the exact time that it's about to close, is very important as well. We've actually seen an uptick in our bidding, especially the day before, between 8 and 10 p.m. and 5 and 8 in the morning. And it just shows that when people have the time to sit on their couch and open their phone, or before they go to bed, or before they head out for work in the morning, they're having their morning coffee and breakfast, and they can look and see where the piece of machinery is at when they're bidding, or place their bids and go to work for the rest of the day, right? So it's all about convenience for those bidders and buyers. And again, I go back to a story a long time ago when a customer who was a very busy man, and everybody is in this day and age, said, I want to know the exact time that piece of equipment is selling. And I can't tell you that. I don't know if the bidding's going to go slow for the auctioneer, if it's going to go really fast. I can give you an hour range, and that just didn't really work for them. And now with the whole change to timed auction, they can go on for 3-4 days when it opens up, and they know exactly the time it's going to close. It might go a little later with extra bidding and time extensions, but they know that, no earlier than 1:29 on Tuesday that it's going to close, and they can set their alarm. They can They can, make sure that they take their lunch break at that time, whatever they do, but it's convenient for them. And that's the most important thing to get the most money for our sellers, is to make sure that our bidders and buyers have convenience and comfortable when they're doing it. When it comes to the seller, we've, especially for on farms, I've seen a huge relief in stress from our sellers. Back in the days when we had to host an entire auction with 200, 300, 400 people on their farm, in their yard, it was a high stress environment. We needed them to have the equipment running in the morning, so when people showed up, it started at the turn of a key. So those sellers had to wake up early, make sure everything started in the morning. And in the month of April, there's some pretty cold days, and that just created stress. Then they had a whole bunch of people in their yard, and getting asked a lot of questions on sale day. A lot of times we sat down at the end of the day and said, "How'd the day go for you?" And they were just like, "I'm glad it's over." And you could see it on their face. They were drained. They had no energy left. And as soon as we went to the timed auction, where less people were there on sale day, lots of people still come and look, and they come on sale day. They come the weeks prior. But that sale day, they kind of sat with the people that they wanted there, friends, family, whoever they wanted to bring in, and they got to sit there, relax, watch it unfold, have a party after if that's what they desired. Some of them had drinks during, and when you had a live auction, they just couldn't do that. They could relax with a beer or pop, whatever they choose, and enjoy the auction and watch it unfold and sit down after, and they just had a great experience. So we're seeing a lot less stress on our sellers, because let's be honest, it's a crazy stressful day for them. It's their retirement sale in a lot of cases, and it's their RRSPs, it's their pension plan when they sell their equipment, and it's a high stress day regardless. This is just one way I think that we've seen them be a little more relaxed during that high stress day.
Yeah, I think just to touch on that too, Luke touched about the retirement, and there's a lifetime of work that's all coming to a head on one single day. And our farmers, our end users, our farming community, they love to be in control. And although every time they farm, they're not in control of Mother Nature, they're not in control of what crop prices might be, but there's a lot of things they are in control of. When it comes to an auction sale, a lot of that control is not there. So when you look at even outside factors as to what may make their sales successful in the past or not, was weather. Is it going to snow or rain on sale day? Can customers actually get to their yard for a live auction? Can the auction company actually get to their yard for the auction sale? Parking, trying to get people even in, and there's times that we've had to park in other towns and transport or bus customers in. And there's just a lot of variables that when you look at it from a risk factor, we're quite high. And from an auction company, we try to mitigate those risks as best we can, but there's even some that are outside of our control. And I'm pretty proud of our company and our group that we've had doing our on-site and off-site, and farm auctions over the past, and we've been able to make it work. In some cases, some really, really challenging situations. But to Luke's point, now a lot of those risks are somewhat removed, and the customers are enjoying the day and the benefits of it. And I think it just makes for a much more enjoyable experience and a more controlled experience. And from our standpoint, the scalability, side of things, we're able actually to do more auctions than we were before. We were somewhat limited by logistics, by people, by resources, by equipment. And a lot of times the timing that we could then work with the customer for their sale, that didn't necessarily work for them. So we tried to make it work, but now we're able to adjust much more easily, and we're more efficient from an auction standpoint. And our customers, as Luke talked, even from the buyers, efficiency is a huge word that you'll hear in the ag market all the way along. And the customers they want efficiency, and they want to be efficient in their own market. They want to be efficient with when they're buying and when they're selling. And I think the timed auction process helps inhibit or make their day much better and more efficient for them.
And I guess, in the stress issues, one thing, and maybe this is part of it, are the sellers also finding this to be sort of more convenient for them, in that, obviously, like you touched on, they're not having a crowd show up on one day, but are they finding it, just easier to kind of manage on the whole with people coming to check out equipment and that sort of thing?
I think so. The toughest part is a lot of them are retirement sales, so they don't have two of them. We don't have any customers that had it one way and now are having it another. But I truly feel in the post sale conversations that I've had is, whether they know it or not, I can see it in their demeanor and the day that they've had. The last one I went to, we set up a projector in their shop, and they had 40, 50 family and friends over all day, and they visited while we had the timed auction projected onto the wall of the shop. And it was just lots of people laughing about prices and joking about prices. And, that just wasn't something that ever happened before. Lots of times you'd talk to the seller at the end of the day, and he's like, I had no time to even see one thing sell. Didn't hear one piece sell. Right. And they get so busy with questions and running around, and they just don't get to actually experience how it all actually went down. So I it's hard to say if they're feeling that. I think from what I've seen, it's been better, but like I said, we don't have one person that did it one way and the same person that did it another. It's just such a rare event for someone to have two full dispersals or two full retirement sales.
Yeah, and the live auction component from the way that we used to do it prior to COVID was something that really has been unchanged since the start of time in Western Canada for auction. For 150 years, auctions have been kind of held that way, where an auctioneer will sell a piece to a public, and they will bid in transparent form. So for a lot of people that are very community minded and legacy people in these small agricultural towns in Western Canada, that was something that was a way of life. And to a certain degree, it still is, whether it's fundraising auctions, and you don't have to travel very far to find an auction happening somewhere in Western Canada. So the change that we had to transition to as a company was stark, and it happened quick. Obviously, it had to happen through COVID. But I think a lot of people, they miss certain aspects of the live auction. But when you really have those conversations with customers as to what they're missing, it's the social aspect. Auction sales were a way for communities to come together, for farmers to see other farmers, to talk about weather, farming practices, politics, anything under the sun. And it was a way for almost a break in the farming action to go watch the auction sale. So to Luke's point about customers getting together at a seller's auction now, we still encourage that the best we can. It's not the same format and the same platform that has happened in the past, but I think there's a lot of benefits that outweigh the way that we used to do it. However, we still want to have that atmosphere where customers can get together and still have that social aspect, because I think at the end of the day, that's what customers really enjoyed, and to a certain degree, that's what they miss. So it's our belief that we want to make sure that some way, somehow, that customer, if they so choose, still can have a social outing, can invite half the community over and their friends and families and whatever they would like, to make that enjoyable experience. And we find that some don't even want that. They want to sit at the kitchen table and watch their sale transact over a computer on their TV, and that's their comfort level. So it's to each their own, which we definitely support and want to make sure that we can help them through that process.
Well, that's probably a good sort of segue into our next question, and this is just something might be or listeners and viewers might be interested in, and how Ritchie Brothers stands out from other agricultural auctions or auction companies. I mean, obviously we touched on one. A lot of it is the online timed auctions, but is there other aspects that really make a difference, make us stand out?
I think when I stand back and look at our leadership group that we have within our agricultural auction team, our territory managers, our group of operations people that help behind the scenes to set up the sales, there's a common thread, and that is our strive to be the best. We have a very competitive attitude that we want to be better than our next competitor. So we will find ways to constantly strive to do the little things right and cover the details and push to be better than the next. And even a competition amongst ourselves, we find that there's a group that we're always challenging each other to try and be better and find new ways to improve our business. And I think from a company standpoint, that's just a mantra that we've always had, right back to Dave Ritchie, when he was one of the first auction companies that foresaw the use of live internet bidding, and to try and be that disruptor to the industry. So I think when I look at things that, even the change from live auction to timed auction, if we made that decision in about 10 days, just for the fact that we had a whole bunch of sellers in an April auction season that we needed to represent, that put their trust for their retirement auction in us, and we had to transition. And we had, I guess, the courage to do that, but also could rest in the fact that we had the platforms and the systems behind the scenes that we knew that if we had to do that, it would work. So from a company standpoint, we're continually investing in ourselves to make sure that we can stay in front of the ever-changing needs of our customers. As we talk about equipment needs changing for our customers, efficiencies, technologies, their time being more important. The same things are happening internally with Ritchie Brothers, that we're trying to stay ahead of the marketplace. And for the fact that we can continually do that, but still honor the age-old traditions and legacies that are important to our customers, but also marry that together with the latest and greatest technology, and not have the and I guess to have the courage to make sure that we continue to push the pace and disrupt the industry to make sure that we're leading the charge. And I think from my standpoint at Luke's, and I know our entire teams, is we want to be the best, and we want to find ways to do it right. And are we getting it right every single day? No, we're going to make mistakes just like anybody else, but we recognize that, we get in front of it, and we stand beside it. And I think one of the other factors I always talk about with Ritchie Brothers and our company is our transparency. Everything is above board with Ritchie Brothers, even right down to the way that we sell with it's unreserved through live auctions. That's incredibly important to me. So as I talked about, auctions 150 years ago, when you could see who you're bidding against, that was a transparent aspect, and everything that we do is transparent. We have nothing to hide, and we want to be as honest and upfront with customers as they want to be dealt with. So to me, it's trying to do the little things right, and constantly look at this. And this is our only job. This is our only employer. So we do everything we can to make sure that we are pushing the pace and leading the charge within the auction industry.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think, one thing a lot of customers or sellers don't always realize, and you sort of touched on this, is the number of people that are kind of working in the background. They might have a few people they're in touch with, like face to face, but you think of all the people that are sort of running the show behind the scenes, from you guys to people in IT and tech, and people searching titles and the whole thing. There's like hundreds of people behind kind of every auction that people don't necessarily get to see, but that support network, I imagine, is it's a huge part of what we do.
Well, if I can speak from my own personal transition, is we had our own family-owned auction company, and we sold to Ritchie Brothers in 2007. So a lot of our competitors, are owner-operators, and I was in that same spot as well, where we were doing many jobs with very few people to cover those jobs, and we necessarily didn't have specialists in any one of those categories. So the thing that attracted me with Ritchie Brothers was the team. The team behind the scenes. You touched on it, the IT, the finance, the legal side, the operational, the setup side, our auctioneers, our salespeople. There is just a very large team there to support. And I don't know if, people truly understand what it goes into to run a successful auction, but behind every territory manager that meets the customer for the first time, and then the group of 2 or 3 of our setup people that come to assist with the setup of that auction sale, there's a group of anywhere from 100 to 200 people behind the scenes that are working to make that sale successful. So to me, that's incredibly important, is the access to resources. So, when we do get busy, when the industry gets busy, we can ramp up our resources and pull in from multiple areas to make sure that we can match that activity level to stay ahead of the game, and to make sure that we're continually trying to do everything right. And that's one of the things for me is a pride factor, is that I still treat what we do as my own company, and we just have that whole pride amongst our team that we want to do the little things right, and we challenge each other to be better and find ways to improve our business for our customers.
Well, before we sort of wrap it up, and kind of on that note, us doing our best for auctions, are there any upcoming ag auctions or big events you want to kind of highlight or discuss? People should take note of?
It's actually funny you said that because this just got laid on my desk this morning, and it's our summer auction guide that's just been printed. I've had the digital one for a couple days, but this one just got printed, so it's kind of fun to be able to look through every year or every season, I guess. But yeah, it's 76 pages long, and we've got 37 on-farm auctions in it. We've got a couple site auctions in it, and obviously a full summer slate of some other auctions coming up, and real estate, everything, equipment, farm retirement. It's got it all. So it's hard to peg just one or two. I know we've got a really nice one down in Kincaid, Saskatchewan. And I believe it's for, I had the page marked here. Now I got to sift through it, but for Gordon and Darcy McLeod. So beautiful sale down there on June 23rd. And then I do want to touch on this other one because we're seeing it more and more. It's in Foam Lake on July 11th. And this is happening more and more where customers, it's not a retirement sale. It's actually a realignment, and they're having it on their farm. If you look through the pages, it looks exactly like a retirement sale, just like all the other ones. But it's just a realignment where they had a bunch of equipment that they wanted to upgrade, and they're using us and our services and our on-site services to help satisfy, rather than hauling it every single piece into a yard, they're going to do it on their farm, which works fine for us and works better for them. So thought I'd bring that one up because it is unique. We seem to see, I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago, it was rare. And now we're seeing at least 1 or 2 a season, which, it's encouraged by us. We can sell your equipment whichever way works best for you, whether you keep it on your site, whether you want to haul it into our sites, we can handle it. We'll work with any customer on whatever needs that'll satisfy, them selling the equipment through us.
Great. So a couple of good auctions to take note, but another busy summer season coming up, kicking off soon. Well, thanks to you both, Jordan and Luke. It's been great chatting to you, and appreciate your insight and your input. And thank you again for joining.